Thanks to a mix of cheap labor, gorgeous landscapes, and zero health regulations, tons of low-budget films were shot in the Philippines. In the 70s and 80s, Roger Corman worked with Filipino director Cirio Santiago, and during that time, the two made numerous films, mostly action with a healthy dose of exploitation. Clarke Henderson was the second unit director and production supervisor on the 1985 Santiago post-apocalyptic film, Wheels of Fire. While working on the film, he met writer and actor Fred Bailey. The two worked well together and became good friends. Both Henderson and Bailey worked with Santiago and Corman over the years until one day, Henderson became involved in a production with Freeze Entertainment. It was going to be an action film shot in Manila on a budget of about $1.5 million, which was about triple the cost of an average Corman production. Clarke and his wife Isabel were hired to be the line producers, with Clarke also working as the second unit director. The title of the film at the time was Heartstone. They had Australian director Brian Trenchard Smith on board to direct. It was early in the production, and the studio wasn't entirely happy with the script. Since Clarke had a previous working relationship with Fred Bailey, he suggested they hire him to do a rewrite. Bailey met with Trenchard Smith, who gave him tons of ideas to use for his rewrite. The initial concept for the film was sound, but the scripts they had written just didn't work. He took the previous scripts and did a full overhaul on them. In the end, the shooting script was about 10% the previous writers and 90% Bailey. The studio wanted the film to sound more ominous, so they changed the name to Demonstone. The film was about a series of brutal murders taking place in Manila, all linked to a cursed 400-year-old amulet that was uncovered by a visiting TV reporter. The movie was a supernatural revenge film, with elements of action, horror, and even a little drama. With the script in place, they began casting. For the leads, they hired Michael Vincent, Nancy Everhard, and Arlie Ermey. The main supporting character was played by Pat Skipper, who was hired to play the Marine at the center of all this mess. Trenchard Smith was very excited to get him on board. The cast and crew were getting ready to shoot the film in Manila in 1989. A short time into the production, Trenchard Smith was having some problems. The Hendersons contacted Bailey and flew him to Manila to assist Smith with his efforts. After filming for about a week, Smith left the production for reasons no one fully understood. The producers quickly hired a replacement, Andrew Prowse, another director from Australia. He was flown in and took the reins of the production. Trenchard Smith left on a Friday, and Prowse arrived 2 days later and started working on Monday, so they didn't lose a single day of production. Prowse didn't need Bailey's assistance, but since he was an actor, they cast him in a small role as the Navy doctor. After that, filming continued, but unfortunately they started having problems with their lead. With his disarming good looks, Michael Vincent was a huge star in the 80s. While working on Airwolf, he became the highest paid actor on TV, receiving a rumored $250,000 per episode. Sadly, drug and alcohol problems plagued him, which made him difficult to work with. Airwolf was cancelled in 1986, and after that, he had a hard time finding work. While working on Demonstone, every day when he showed up on set, he wanted to know 3 things. Where's the coffee? When's lunch? And when do we wrap? Needless to say, he didn't make too many friends on set. At one point, he went missing. This made everyone panic because they had to reorganize the schedule to shoot whatever they could without the actor. The schedule was tight, and if they weren't filming, they were losing money. They searched local bars but couldn't find him. No one knew where he was. Finally, after 3 days, he showed up on set and the director let him have it. Vincent had nothing but lame excuses, but never said where he went. Everhard was familiar with Vincent, as they had previously worked together in 1985 on an episode of Airwolf. She was well aware of how difficult he could be. Meanwhile, Arlie Ermey was the complete opposite. The consummate professional, always on time, always helping, always a positive force on the production. His wife, Nyla, was Filipina, and he starred in many films in the Philippines, so he was completely at home in Manila. With his extensive military background, he was able to improv dialogue to greatly improve the scenes he was in, such as the scene where he's instructing the Marines on how to handle the riot crowds. Some of the best lines in the film were Ermey's ad-libs. With Vincent back, they returned to their regular filming schedule. The riot scene, as well as the scenes with the professor, were shot at the University of Manila. The Fargo mansion was a mansion formerly owned by the dictator Ferdinand Marcos. They shot numerous scenes there, like the wedding reception and the climax of the film. The waterfall attack scene was shot about 40 miles outside of Manila, the same location they used in Corman's Primary Target from 1990. The caves were also close to this location. In the scene where Vincent and Everhard are talking at the bar, they wanted to add atmosphere, but they didn't have a fog machine. So in classic low-budget movie fashion, they had a bunch of the crew crouch underneath the bar and chain smoke cigarettes. Bailey wrote a scene in the script where Sharon breaks into the mansion, jams a gun through the body of a henchman so she can shoot another henchman. He wrote it in, but never dreamed they would actually shoot it. Much to his surprise, they did, and it's one of the coolest moments in the film. A rarity in this sort of film was that they were able to get it greenlit without having a love scene. Part of the way through filming, one of the producers noticed this and demanded they put one in. They argued there wasn't one in the script and it wouldn't add anything to the film. Didn't matter, the studio wanted one. This created an unforeseen problem. While working on a film in Central America, Vincent caught a fungal disease that left numerous ugly scabs all over his body. Not an STD, but some sort of dermatological infection. There was no way they could do a love scene without anyone noticing. They tried to explain this to the studio, but to no avail. They demanded they shoot something. They were able to work around it by having a shortened scene where the couple kept their clothes on. During the scene, they all thought, "Poor Nancy," but she was a professional and didn't complain once. During the shoot, Everhard became good friends with her stunt double. Being that this was the Philippines, her double was a dark-haired local who was also much shorter than her. They gave her a wig and tried to shoot at a lower angle to minimize the height difference, but sometimes you can really tell it's not her. The two remain friends to this day. Clarke did second unit, but also directed one of the big action sequences for the film. In the scene where Vincent's being chased by motorcycles, at the end of the chase there was an accident that almost killed one of the actors. One of the cars spun out of control on the rain-slicked concrete and smashed into a truck. The actor, Ray Maltacruz, ducked down, and if he hadn't, he would have been crushed. This is one of the dangers of not just low-budget filmmaking, but filmmaking in general. It cost a chunk of their budget to fix the car, and a few weeks later they came back to reshoot the scene. Thankfully this time, it went off without error. There was another scene where the married couple crashes into a ravine. The stunt coordinator, Patrick Statham, was the one who crawled out of the car on fire. It's an impressive stunt, made all the more so when you realize it's all practical. While shooting the film, they ran into another problem. They didn't have any idea how they were going to do some of the visual effects, like the demon ghost scenes. With nothing planned, they just shot the scenes as they were written and hoped to add the effects in later. After the movie wrapped, they moved to a studio in LA for post-production. During the edit, they noticed another problem. The film was a great little action horror film whenever Vincent wasn't around. His performance, or lack thereof, was dragging the whole film down. They could clearly see when compared to the other actors on the film that he was just phoning the whole thing in. They needed to do something. Clarke Henderson and Andrew Prowse worked with the editor, Michael Vincent, to do what they could to fix the film. They went back over every piece of footage they shot with Vincent in it, and pulled out whatever they thought they could use. Through the combined efforts of 3 people, they were able to put together a decent performance for the actor. This just continues to prove that movies are made in the editing room, and a good editor can save a movie. With all the work done on the film, they still needed to put in some sort of visual effects, but had very little of the budget left. They contacted a company called Image 3, which was a division of Fantasy 2, to do the optical effects. The company gave them an offer, and when they responded with a counteroffer, the lady on the phone broke down crying. Special effects houses are squeezed so much it's hard for them to stay in business. They were desperate for work at the time, so they took the offer despite it being much lower than it should have been. While putting the film together, they had an opening where they cross-cut between an ancient sarcophagus opening plus other elements that really pulled you into the story and set the tone for the film. However, the producers had them take it out because it was too artsy and thought the audience wouldn't understand it. The movie was released in February of 1990, and like most smaller films of the time, it recouped its budget through distribution deals as well as cable and VHS sales. Demonstone is a very cool supernatural action film. The script lifts it above other films of its kind, and part of me wonders if the film would have fared better had Vincent delivered a better performance. Everhard and Ermi both carried the film. Everhard gave a solid performance as the possessed reporter doomed to carry out the curse to her last breath. She was terrific and made the part believable. Ermi was great as always, but one major thing I liked here was that he was playing a good guy for a change. While yes, he was playing another military role, he wasn't the notorious hard-ass we've seen in so many other films. He was tough as nails when needed, but was also compassionate and worked to help his longtime friend. Sadly, while I was working on this episode, Ermi died of complications related to pneumonia. He's had a long career acting and doing voice acting in over 120 productions. He was 74 and will be dearly missed. Henderson continued working on smaller films and eventually moved on to larger productions as an associate producer for films like Mimic and Holes. He continued and was the post-production supervisor on Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow and The Guardian. Everhard continued acting mostly in TV shows like Reasonable Doubts, The Untouchables, and Everwood. Vincent continued acting mostly in lower-budget horror and crime thrillers like Sins of Desire, Raw Nerve, and Ice Cream Man. He was never able to reacquire his star status and retired from acting officially in 2009. Even though Trenchard Smith left the production, he was still credited as an executive producer on the film, because beyond the few days he was filming, he was instrumental in the casting, pre-production, as well as helping to develop the story. Demonstone is yet another film that has been all but forgotten over the years. Despite the less enthusiastic lead, the rest of the cast proved more than capable to keep the whole thing afloat. Everhard delivers some unexpected and great action, while Ermi provides a foundation that makes the supernatural elements seem feasible. It's definitely one of the most unique films to come out of the Filipino exploitation explosion of the time.
Is this who I think it is?
Damn right, it's Andy.
Now, you got a lot of balls calling me. After the stunt you pulled out, I'll give you a verbal enema, buddy.